Surprisingly, over 90% of viewers haven't subscribed yet. If you're enjoying the content, hit that subscribe button. It motivates us to keep creating and helps us never miss an upload. When I first held my newborn son, everything else in the world disappeared. The beeping machines, the shuffle of nurses, even the sterile hospital smell. None of it mattered. I stared down at his tiny face, his little hands curled into fists, and I felt something I can't even describe. It was as if every sacrifice, every long hour at work, every bit of patience in the months leading up to this moment had been worth it. I was finally a father. Claire looked exhausted but radiant. Sweat clung to her forehead, her hair was a mess, but her smile was the most beautiful I had ever seen. Her mother stood by the bed, wiping tears from her eyes as she leaned close to see her new grandson. It should have been perfect, the kind of moment you lock away in your memory to replay on hard days. But then, out of nowhere, Claire whispered something that nearly stopped my heart. "Look how much he looks like Marshall." At first, I thought I misheard her. I blinked, still staring down at the baby in my arms. Then I glanced at her, confusion washing over me. Marshall? Who was Marshall? Her mother's reaction told me everything. She froze for half a second before forcing a laugh. "She meant Martin," she blurted quickly, her voice just a little too high. "She's still out of it from the anesthesia, Martin. That's what she meant." I just nodded, not saying a word. My lips curved into a faint smile for the nurse as if nothing had happened, but my chest felt like it was caving in. I looked down at the baby again, and for the first time, instead of joy, I felt a sliver of doubt slide into my heart. When the nurse came back to check on Claire, I caught her sleeve gently. "Can I ask you something? Privately," I whispered. She glanced at me, professional but kind. "Of course." I hesitated, my throat dry. "I want a DNA test, on the baby. Tonight, if possible." Her eyes flicked with surprise, but she nodded. "We can arrange that." Quietly. I thanked her, then went back to Claire's side, playing the part of the supportive husband. I held her hand, told her she did amazing, kissed her forehead, and acted like nothing was wrong. Inside, though, my mind spun. Who was Marshall? Why would she say that name at that moment? The moment our son came into the world. Over the next couple of days, I watched her closely. She acted normal, or at least what passed as normal for someone recovering from childbirth. She doted on the baby, smiled at me, thanked me for helping her sit up, joked about hospital food. But every time she said our son's name, every time she looked at me with those tired eyes, all I could hear in my head was her whisper, "Look how much he looks like Marshall." Marshall wasn't just some random name, I knew it. I could feel it. On the second day, when visitors came, I noticed something else. Claire's phone buzzed repeatedly on the tray table. She ignored it, but her mother kept glancing at the screen nervously. Once, when she thought I wasn't looking, she picked it up and slipped it into her purse. By the third day, I was living in a fog, smiling, nodding, changing diapers, learning how to swaddle, all the things a new dad should do. But underneath it all, I was waiting. Waiting for the results. Waiting for the confirmation of a fear I didn't want to admit out loud. That afternoon, the nurse slipped a folded envelope into my jacket pocket as she walked past. My pulse hammered. I excused myself, stepped into the dimly lit stairwell, and opened it with trembling hands. The words blurred for a second, but then they came into focus. Probability of paternity. 0%. I sank onto the step, the paper shaking in my grip. 0. Not 50. Not doubtful. 0. My entire body went cold. I thought back to every night I had sat by Claire's side during her pregnancy, every time I rubbed her feet, every time I talked to her belly, promising our baby I would always be there. All of it felt like a cruel joke now. I slid the paper back into the envelope, my mind a storm. I didn't rush into the room screaming. I didn't throw the paper in her face. I just walked back in, calm and quiet, and picked up my son. My son, that's what I had called him. But he wasn't mine. Claire smiled weakly. "He loves you already," she said softly. I forced a smile. "Yeah," I whispered. That night, after I tucked the envelope into my bag, my phone buzzed. At first, I ignored it, focused only on rocking the baby to sleep. But then the notifications came faster, one after another, dozens of them. When I finally opened my inbox, my eyes widened. Text after text, all from the same number. Desperate messages filling the screen. "Martin, please, don't do anything rash. We can explain. Just hear me out. I never wanted you to find out like this. Please, just let me talk to you. Don't tell anyone yet. We can figure this out." I stared at the screen, my stomach twisting. Whoever Marshall was, he clearly knew I had found out. And now, everything I thought I knew about my marriage, about my family, about my life, was unraveling at once. And it was only the beginning. The envelope with the DNA results sat in my bag like a live wire. Every time I reached for my phone or wallet, I could feel its weight, reminding me of the truth I couldn't escape. My son, the child I had waited 9 months to meet, the child I had promised to love, wasn't mine, and the woman who vowed loyalty, the one I had defended, supported, trusted completely, had chosen to betray me in the cruelest way possible. But her mistake wasn't just the affair. It wasn't even giving birth to another man's child. It was the whisper. That one careless moment when adrenaline, pain, and exhaustion lowered her guard, and she revealed his name. Marshall. That was all I needed. The texts in my inbox kept coming. I didn't reply to any of them. Instead, I let them pile up. It didn't take long before the desperation in his words grew obvious. "Please, man, don't ruin this for her. It's complicated. I'll take
responsibility, but you have to understand. She still loves you too. We never planned for this to happen. Please, don't blow everything up." Still, I stayed silent. Let them sweat. Claire noticed my quietness, but mistook it for exhaustion. "You're such a good dad already," she whispered one night, kissing my cheek as I rocked the baby. My jaw tightened at the words, but I forced a smile. I had already learned the value of silence. Words can expose anger. Silence exposes truth. When we were discharged and came home, her mother insisted on staying for a few days to help. I knew what it really was: damage control. I caught the way she watched me when she thought I wasn't looking, scanning my face for signs that I knew. She never mentioned Marshall, neither did Claire. They carried on as if everything was fine, but their eyes gave them away. I started paying closer attention. Who was Marshall? How close was he to us? Why was his name the one that slipped in such a raw, vulnerable moment? It didn't take long to find out. On the 4th night home, when Claire finally dozed off on the couch, her phone buzzed with a notification. I usually wouldn't touch her personal things, but that boundary had shattered the night she whispered his name. I picked it up and opened the message. "I'm losing my mind not being able to see him. Please, just one picture tonight. No one has to know." My chest tightened. Attached was a photo request. My stomach turned as I scrolled back through earlier conversations, my hands shaking. There he was, Marshall. I recognized him immediately. Not a stranger. Not some distant fling. He was a co-worker. The same man Claire had mentioned casually months ago, the one she claimed was just a friend at work. He had been in our home once for a barbecue. I remembered him holding a beer, smiling too widely, thanking me for the invitation. And all the while he had been sleeping with my wife. I put the phone down carefully, like it might burn me. My head spun. It wasn't just betrayal. It was humiliation. I had shaken this man's hand, welcomed him into my house, trusted him. The next morning I acted normal. I kissed Claire on the forehead, made her breakfast, and told her I'd handle errands so she could rest. She smiled with gratitude, never realizing the storm brewing inside me. But I didn't run errands. I drove to the hospital instead. The nurse who had arranged the test met me discreetly in her office. She looked at me with quiet sympathy. "You don't deserve this," she said softly. I nodded. "I know, thank you." On the drive back, my phone buzzed again. Another message from Marshall. "Man to man. Please don't take this out on her. She didn't mean for this to happen. I'll step back if that's what you want, just please don't destroy her." My grip tightened on the wheel. Destroy her? She had destroyed everything herself. My only thought now was Sophie. My daughter. She had no idea her mother had ripped our family apart. And I wasn't going to let this shatter her world all at once. That night, when Sophie came to sit on my lap while I held the baby, she looked up at me with her big, innocent eyes. Daddy, is he going to be my brother forever? She asked softly. I kissed her forehead. Yes, sweetheart, no matter what happens, he'll always be your brother. I realized then that my revenge couldn't be reckless. It had to be careful. It had to be quiet. And it had to be devastating enough that Claire would feel it in her bones for the rest of her life. The first step was to keep playing along. I smiled. I helped. I cooked meals. I changed diapers. I said all the right things. Claire, believing I was none the wiser, grew comfortable again. She stopped hiding her phone as carefully, stopped glancing nervously at her mother. She thought the danger had passed. But I was documenting everything. Every text I found. Every receipt I uncovered. Every timeline she contradicted. I built a folder, neatly organized, filled with the truth she thought she had buried. 3 weeks after the baby's birth, Claire's phone lit up while she showered. Another message from Marshall. I can't stand this. I need to see you. He's clueless, right? Please say yes. I screenshotted it, added it to the folder, and placed the phone back exactly where I found it. That night, Claire crawled into bed beside me and whispered, I love you. You've been amazing through all of this. I looked at her, forcing my face calm. I love you too. Inside, though, I knew love had died the night she whispered that name. A week later, my phone buzzed with another flood of messages, this time from her. Dozens of them, frantic and desperate. Please don't do anything rash. I swear I was going to tell you. I just didn't know how. You're a great father no matter what. Don't let this ruin everything we've built. The fact that she was texting me this meant one thing. She had realized I knew. Maybe she noticed the way I looked at her differently. Maybe Marshall told her I hadn't replied to his messages. Whatever the reason, the illusion had shattered. But still I stayed silent. I realized silence was my greatest weapon, because silence left her to wonder. Silence made her spiral. Silence forced her to confront the truth without me ever needing to raise my voice. I spent my days with Sophie, making her laugh, building pillow forts, keeping her world as steady as possible. And every night I sat across from Claire at the dinner table, watching her crumble slowly under the weight of what she had done. She tried to smile, she tried to talk about the baby, she tried to pretend, but the cracks spread wider each day. And I knew, soon, it would all collapse. The texts kept pouring in, but I never answered. I let them pile up until my phone looked like a war zone of confessions and excuses. Every ping was another piece of evidence, another nail in the coffin of a marriage that was already dead. Claire grew jumpier by the day. She started watching me closely, like a thief checking to see if the police were on their trail. Her smiles turned nervous, her laughter brittle. She knew I knew, but she couldn't prove it. And the not knowing what I'd do next ate at her more than any shouted confrontation ever could. Marshall tried harder. His messages turned from pleading to angry. Why are you ignoring me? We need to talk man to man. If you're thinking of leaving her, fine, but don't punish her for loving me. You don't have the right to decide what happens with my son. That last line nearly made me snap. My son. Those 2 words cut deeper than anything else he had said. But instead of exploding, I took a screenshot, filed it neatly into the folder, and let the fury simmer. Sometimes silence is sharper than rage. Claire finally broke one night. We were sitting at the dinner table, Sophie talking excitedly about her art project while I smiled and listened. Claire pushed her food around her plate, eyes darting between us. Then when Sophie left the room to grab something from her backpack, Claire's voice cracked. Martin, I know you know. I didn't look up from my plate. Know what? Her hands trembled as she set her fork down. About Marshall. About the baby. Please, I didn't mean for it to happen. It was a mistake that went too far. But I love you. I never stopped loving you. I finally met her eyes, calm, steady, unreadable. You whispered his name while I was holding what was supposed to be my son. That wasn't a mistake, Claire. That was the truth. Her face crumpled. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she reached across the table, but I pulled my hands back. She sobbed, begging, but I stayed silent. The silence cut her deeper than shouting ever could. For the next week, she tried everything. Apologies, promises, sudden affection. She deleted texts, avoided calls, acted like she was willing to do anything to save us. But it was too late. The damage had been done.
Not by me, not even by Marshall, but by her own choices. Then Marshall vanished. His frantic messages stopped suddenly, replaced by silence. I later learned he had quit his job, transferred to another city, and left Claire completely alone. He got what he wanted, the thrill, the conquest, and when things grew complicated, he ran. He left her holding the wreckage, and that's when I delivered my revenge. I called Claire into the living room one evening after Sophie had gone to bed. She looked nervous, wringing her hands, clearly expecting me to file for divorce or kick her out that night. I handed her a folder instead. She opened it with shaking fingers, and her face went white. Screenshots, texts, photos, timelines, bank statements, hotel receipts, the DNA results, everything. This, I said quietly, is who you are. Not who you pretend to be. Not the wife. Not the mother. This is the woman you chose to be. She sobbed, clutching the papers. Martin, please. Don't show anyone. Don't ruin me. I stood, my voice calm and steady. You already ruined yourself. I don't need to scream. I don't need to hit. I don't need to humiliate you in public. All I have to do is keep this folder safe. And remember. She collapsed onto the couch, broken. The next day, I went to see a lawyer. I laid out everything, from the DNA test to the messages. The lawyer flipped through the folder slowly, nodding. This is ironclad, she said. You'll get full custody of Sophie. She'll lose everything. That night, Claire begged again. Please don't take Sophie from me. She's all I have. I looked at her, and for the first time in months, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered Sophie's innocent face, the way she deserved stability, truth, and love, not a life built on her mother's lies. She's not all you have, I said coldly. You'll still have your memories of Marshall, and the regret of losing everything you took for granted. The court proceedings were swift. My lawyer presented the evidence. Claire's lawyer tried to argue she was a devoted mother despite her mistakes, but the DNA results and the documented affair destroyed her credibility. The judge granted me full custody of Sophie. Claire was given visitation rights, supervised at first. She wept in the courtroom, begging for another chance. I stayed silent. My silence was louder than any accusation. Afterward, she tried one last desperate plea. Martin, please, can't we start over? I'll do anything, just don't leave me alone. I turned to her, my voice low but sharp. You left me the moment you whispered his name. You just didn't realize it yet. And with that, I walked away. Sophie thrived in the months that followed. She laughed again, her world steady and safe. She never knew the full truth, just that her father was there, always there, and that her mother had made mistakes that couldn't be undone. I shielded her from the ugliest parts because she deserved innocence, not scars. As for Claire, she faded into the background of our lives. She sent occasional texts, tried to rebuild slowly, but the damage was permanent. Sophie tolerated her visits but never looked at her the same way. Trust, once shattered, never glues back perfectly. Sometimes, late at night, I would think back to that hospital room. Me, holding my newborn, my heart full of love, only to hear the one word that destroyed everything. Marshall. I remember her mother's panicked cover-up, the desperate laugh, the way I nodded quietly and asked for the DNA test. And I smile. Not because it was funny, but because in that moment I realized something. The best revenge isn't screaming or destroying someone publicly. The best revenge is the quiet truth, spoken in whispers, written in DNA results, filed neatly in a folder. Claire thought she could hide behind lies, but it wasn't me who exposed her. It was her own carelessness, her own betrayal, her own voice whispering the wrong name at the wrong time. Now every time I look at Sophie, I know she'll grow up seeing what real loyalty looks like, not through words but through actions. And every time Claire looks at me, she sees the silence that destroyed her more than any fight ever could. That was my revenge. Quiet, patient, complete. And in the end, it left her with nothing but the sound of her own whisper echoing in her head.